This is OECD data for science, for PISA, for kids at school, and you're familiar with these numbers because, you know, top nation in the... Anybody here from Finland? Oh, they should have come. But hey, you know, top nation in terms of science. And look how good they are, you know, head and shoulders above anybody else. And, you know, here's Ireland and Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand, little sort of cluster here. But hang on a minute, because this is a graph with two axes. And the second axis, of course, is for whether kids are enjoying science at all. And so in all this progress, yeah, sure, we've got some scores on the doors, we've got some excellence, but we've got some pretty dejected children. And actually it's as well nobody came from Finland, because their kids might be great at science, but they're probably the least likely to do science ever again in their lives. You know. And you've only got to look at Nokia to see the consequences of that. I mean, you'd sooner be Mexico up here. You know, these guys know sod all, really, you know. They don't know any science, you know. But they're having a terrific time, you know. Randomly dancing around their hats or whatever stereotype you have for Mexico. Selling illegal drugs, probably. But actually, you wouldn't want to be in any of those places. You'd want to be over here, wouldn't you? You'd want to be in a place where learners are really good at it and having the time of their lives. And look, there's nobody there. So you know that the future is going to be very different. Some things never change. Look, here's a moment from your past. Do you remember this optical illusion when you were a kid? And the question here was, is A bigger than B? Or is B bigger than A? Or maybe are they both? Oh, let's have a little moment of test. Who thinks A is bigger than B? And who thinks B is bigger than A? And who thinks they're both the same? Yeah. Of course, you're entirely wrong. A's friggin' miles bigger than B, you know. And I think what I want you to do in our little bit of time here is to kind of rub your eyes and look at what you thought learning looked like, look what you thought higher education looked like, and say, you know what, it's probably not going to be like it was when I was a kid. It's probably not going to be like it was 5 years ago. It's probably not going to be like it was yesterday. It's probably going to be different. And it's going to be different, not the least of which because kids are in the mix. Look, here's me in Spain. This is UCJC in Madrid. This is our Global Education Forum in English, by the way. My Spanish is catastrophic, but I can still teach in a Spanish university. But look, on the stage, running the forum are kids. And sitting over here on the platform, interviewing the guests as they beam in from around the world to review their evidence about better learning are kids. And parked over here, waiting to do the summary, whoops-a-daisy, waiting to do the summary at the end of the day are kids. Sure, the audience is full of old people. And this is us. And then that was 2 years ago. Well, if I go to Bergen earlier this year, I'm over in Bergen, wonderful conference on the future of learning. This is dawn in Bergen, sunrise coming up over a brand new school. And it's a big conference, people pouring into the event to learn about the future of learning. But if you look at them, all 1,000 of them are kids. The conference was by kids, for kids. You know, the workshop sessions, you can see they're kids because you can barely see them over the seats, you know. This workshop was one of the many two-day workshops. They were saying, look, this bit of the curriculum is pretty boring, to be honest. You know, get out the stuff in your pockets, get out your phones and your Chromebooks and your tablets and everything else, and let's find a way to make that more interesting. And that was their focus for the 2 days, you know. And by the way, you know, they They built a Minecraft model. I came into the conference at the end of day one and followed a bunch of kids coming in carrying a really big, heavy-duty industrial drone. And I said, well, that's interesting, you know, as you would. You know. They said, oh yeah, we just built a Minecraft model of the whole school. And we don't know what the roof looks like, so we've had to go off to get a drone so we can just fly it over the roof and check, you know. And by the way, you know, for you old folk and me, they thought they'd better finish on something for us. So, of course, they're kids, of course, they do music, of course, they do music pretty well. And so they finish with a David Bowie tribute, you know, because David Bowie had talked about Major Tom, Ziggy Stardust. He talked about the future, vaguely. So this is kid-led, kid-driven. And what's really interesting about that kid-led, kid-driven world is it's quite an intolerant world. You know, they're doing some exciting things. Let's go to here. This is a school I've been working with in West London. We've been tracking these kids for 7 years. We gave them a lump of money 7 years ago to make over their learning environment. They didn't just make a decision about what they liked. They made a decision about what was effective from the research they could find. They realized that writing on surfaces was a powerful way to learn, because if you got your phone, you write on a surface, you take a copy of it. That's 20 minutes quicker than copying it down a second time. You remember all the little bits of narrative and the twiddly bits. You have an audience for what you're doing. You can see what the other guys are doing. It's really powerful. So all their surfaces, their desks, their walls were writable. They'd looked at how they surveyed themselves. They said, when we get home and we read, what do we read on? You know, this university, which is sumptuous, isn't it? Gorgeous, is full of these chairs. I've been around the morning. That's what I do. I've been wandering around the rooms taking photographs of the learning spaces. They're full of chairs like this. Now, I don't know a child in Dublin, I don't know a child in Europe who reads on a chair like this. You know, if you've been on holiday with kids, have you seen them going to the kitchen in the hotel and dragging the chairs from the dining room down to the beach because they've got a book they want to read? I don't think so. So, you know, education is full of kids who read, and yet we're producing the least likely scenario for them to read with these hideously uncomfortable chairs. These kids surveyed in and said, you know, we can do better. And I'm not going to dwell on this. There's a free iBook. You can read all about it. They had mood lighting because they knew from that Harvard research that red wakes you up in the morning. It was a fairly unexciting building. You know, had a diversity of furniture. They said, look at us, we're fat, we're thin, we're tall, we're short, we're comfy, we're uncomfy. We like to stand, we like to lie down. How could one bit of furniture suit us all? Well, I'm not going to dwell on all this. And you know, the tiered seating and the Skype bars in the back of the class. What's interesting was when we sat down with those kids and said, you know what were you expecting university life to be like? And this is what they said, and it's pretty scary stuff. I made the video for university vice-chancellors who need frightening, I think, from time to time, probably on a daily basis. Sorry, let me actually turn the video on, even better. Here we go. Just want to say I've lost a lot of weight since then. I feel pretty good about that. But anyway, here we go. We got sound here. We got sound now? Are you not? Well, that's a bit crap, isn't it? It was working earlier, wasn't it?
Now and for future generations, and it incorporates a lot of the things that...
See what I did there? Unplug the wire, plug it in again, you know?
We use at home, and technology we use at home, and technology we're familiar with, and I think that helps, and I think that's what makes this classroom like really unique.
It's quite good for group work, so if we just want to move to our own space in the classroom and we need something to write and we don't have to search for paper and pen, and we can just get one of the board pens and write things down.
And I love the coloured light around. Does the coloured light change during the day? How does that?
Yeah, they're mood lights, so they can change themselves, or we can change the settings.
So you can set different mood colours, can you? Oh, very good. Do you think you'll get spaces like this in university?
But I think universities would have probably thought more about that because they're more experienced with students, maybe they're bigger and there's more students so they have more opinions.
I know that when I go to university there's going to be like a range of different types of learning styles, and I'll be able to choose the styles that I like to learn in, and it'll be more independent. It'll be much different from like traditional like secondary school.
And do you think university will have a space that will be as cool as this?
Oh, well, I'm not going to tell him, you know. That lad Edgerow, by the way, just last year turned down a place at Imperial College in London and went to Loughborough because he thought the learning environment was better. So we're tracking these kids. It's been a really interesting little project to scamper through. They're so full of what they did. Look, here was they have a live Twitter feed running from their classroom, and right in the early days I noticed their Lambton citizens tweet. They said, hey, you know, here's my first tweet, we're learning how to use Twitter. I said, wow, you guys are awesome. They said, it's not us, you fool, this is our teachers. We're teaching our teachers how to use Twitter so they can use the classroom we've designed, you know. So this is heady stuff, and it's exciting stuff, and it's exhilarating. And of course it doesn't stop there, because kids themselves, having got engaged in that model of learning, they're pretty much unstoppable. Here's a group of children I've been working with who we spend a bit of time measuring the sound levels in their classrooms. We spend a bit of time measuring the light levels in their classroom. You know, they looked at the research, they knew that 250 lux would be a minimum for learning, and if you're doing close work, keyboard writing, you're shooting for something like 500. They got quite excited about it. They did a soundscape and a lightscape of their school. They looked to see where the best places for learning were. And then they set about making the school better. They set about making their learning better. Here's a bunch of kids standing on a stairwell. This stairwell hit just on 100 decibels, which is proper loud. And what's going on here is the lad over here with the tablet is running one of those free decibel apps. The one I use is called Decibel, so this is easy stuff to remember, you know. And the girls here are walking up and down the stairs, videoing their feet to see if they can find a quieter way of walking on their staircase. Now, the teachers could have stood there and shouted till they were blue in the face about how to be quieter, but there's nothing more powerful than kids saying, our learning, our space, our control, our research. And look, they didn't just stop there, because they then got very excited about how noisy their chairs were. And, you know, the noise of chairs grating on a thermoplastic floor is pretty hideous. They'd noticed in the local library, they had little rubber feet. They thought, tell you what, if we stuck tennis balls on the feet of all our chairs, maybe things will get better. Let's see if we can hear them. It's pretty cool. I shall pass on your joy. This is kids full of the excitement of their learning, and because it didn't just stop there, we then started sampling their data, pumping it up into a cloud. We started saying to kids, I'll tell you what, we said, I bet there are things that you measure about your learning that lets you know when it's better. And they said, sure there is. One of the kids said, I've never had a good learning day when I've eaten my lunch fast. We went, what? And he said, when I'm having a good learning day, I eat my lunch really quick so I can get back to learning. So we gave them sliders that they set the semantic scales for. They chose the data, and every kid had their own data. Every kid had a little badge that revealed their data. We pumped that lot up into a cloud-based spreadsheet. We built a little Arduino Uno in a cupboard. We racked it into a quite cute little algorithm of learning. And on the walls of the classroom, we put a bunch of LEDs that looked like that. So the kids, as they're learning, and as the teacher's teaching, can watch the lights going up and down and getting brighter. You know, and the teacher, the lecturer saying, hang on a minute, the lights are all going down. What's going wrong in here? The kid's saying, well, Chief, it's the CO2. It's all getting a bit high in here. I mean, when you look at the CO2 levels, they're pretty scary. Here's CO2 levels from a standard classroom. And you can see, I think, when break is, because the kids go out at break and they go out at lunchtime. But if I told you that anything above 1,000, you know, we're into damage. You can see how bad our learning environments are. Now, I'm not going to dwell on this whole flipping keynote, you know, just wanted to give you the sense that kids are unstoppable with this stuff. When you say to them, how can you build better learning? They can't wait to do it better. They can't wait to, and it really, really matters. If we roll across into higher education and say to ourselves, well, what does this look like? Higher education, let's be honest, hasn't had a great track record of innovating. This is, I'm not going to tell you which university this is because I really don't want to offend the University of Central England, but they have an innovation room. Anybody here from UC? Cool, they wouldn't admit it now, would you? They've gone to Finland. There's an innovation room. I'm going to do a bit of innovation in a moment. You need to go to room 253, you know. And oh, thank God, luckily, there's a timetable for innovation over here, so I can... and of course, you know, look at the cutting edge stuff in the room. I mean, it's like, wow, Google Glass, eat your heart out, you know. Or let's go to, do you remember when Second Life came out? And what did we do in universities with Second Life? We built islands in Second Life and filled them full of PDFs, you know. Do you remember all that? You know, PDF, what does it stand for? Pretty dull frigging format, you know. PDF is not exciting. You know, building mountains of content is not going to seduce students back into learning. This was last year. I grabbed this screen from anybody here from the University of Delaware. I love you, but I don't love what you did. And of course, lots of possibilities on the table. One possibility, this was many years ago, 15 years ago, we built this degree where the full-time degree was full-time study. What you did full-time for your work was also what you did full-time for your degree. I had people in reception in companies, I had all sorts of people, and we plugged them into their peers, we plugged them into their alumni. I mean, isn't it extraordinary that in higher education we waste our alumni so much? It was interesting, wasn't it? We waste our alumni. Oh, I see, it's the cable falling out. Isn't it interesting that, do you know another industry that only celebrates when its customers leave? Extraordinary. You know, you finish being an undergraduate, you say, that's it, I'm off. And they say, great, let's have a party, get your parents in, we'll have cheese and wine, you know. And you'll never hear from us again, except when we want money. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing. Why can't you be an undergraduate again and again and again? Imagine if you bought the Ford Focus and you go back to buy another one, they say, sorry mate, you can only have the Mondeo or the, you know, but I like my Focus. Well, you've had one of those, you've got to have the next one up. It's extraordinary. So much we do wrong. Why would you have to wait till you're 18 to go to college? Well, we'll come to that in a moment, but what was cool about the ultraversity degree was the mutuality. Look, here are two of the students. They'd never met before graduation. This, I think, was back in 2002, so more than a decade ago. And I was running around like a slightly dotty researcher with my camera, taking photographs of people meeting for the first time. And I'll play you a little clip of it, but just listen to the mutuality. Listen to how important the synchronicity was. Well, the girl on the right is an IT technician. The girl on the left is a mum. They both she did a degree in being a mum. She did a degree in being an IT technician. They did the same degree. Okay, let's hear from them.
Forward for doing other support things and stuff. It's opened quite a few doors that I would never have had opened without it. Yeah. Doing other distance learning, this has been so much more supportive in comparison.
The community's been fantastic, isn't it?
I wouldn't have survived without people like yourself.
Oh, thank you.
And stuff there, especially in the first year.
Yeah.
I found it really tough and different things and stuff. But people like yourself have kept us going and stuff, and it became a team. Although we never met, I think we were actually.
It's fantastic actually meeting
stronger as a team.
We know each other, but we've never met. So
yeah,
it's weird.
And you could mention about fun things, and we did have some fun online with different things and stuff. And the celebration on the last night was quite funny. Actually,
the celebration on the last night was cracking because they all thought they'd get drunk and sing together online, which was quite a difficult thing to achieve. It's quite hard to type when you're drunk, you know, it's quite hard to type a lyric. But what's quite interesting about that is, as I go around the world and turn my television set on, I find every channel here in America, in Japan, China, Australia, every TV channel is awash with learning. People learning to cook, learning to bake, learning to sing, learning to dance, learning to do stuff. And learning has never been more cool. But at the heart of all that are moments of synchronicity. Those now moments turn out to be really, really important. If I was watching, Formula One, I don't know, 10 years ago, I'd have missed the race and said, oh, la, 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 I'm going to watch it tonight, don't worry. Now you would never do that. The nowness of watching an event has become so important that those now moments are artificially injected all the time into our television, people being voted out of the Big Brother house, the dance off for who's going to stay on Dancing with the Stars or My Kitchen Rules in Australia. Those now moments, hugely important, and always have been in learning. And in learning we have now and nearly now and not now. And what we've sort of done, and you've seen the fatal error of this with some of the MOOCs, we've moved some of the synchronicity of those now moments into not now moments. The nearly now ones are quite interesting. And if I'm just sitting watching the Twitter feed running here, just say I'm going, So, I can see people's tweets almost after they've sent them, and I'll probably retweet to them when I sit down. That's sort of nearly now. That's quite good. But now is what you're doing now, looking at me. And not now would be, just a bunch of recorded stuff. Historically, in higher education, always we've made the error of overvaluing the pre-recorded distant stuff and undervaluing the now moment. What's cool about the environment you're all in, that fabulous online environment, especially with the revamp of it. As you see the words of the revamp, you'll see mutuality and collegiality and all those now words leaping out of the screen in a really powerful way. They really matter. Look, here's a little example of that from some kids. This is primary school.
Hello, Namaste from India. Your teachers, Mrs. Wallace and Mrs. Bradley, have asked me to answer your questions on India, but now is not really a good time. I'll see you again in Jaisalmer, a city nearby. See you.
See, that's lovely, isn't it? Because there's a little recorded moment of somebody saying, I can't talk now, I'm on a camel, but I'll see you tonight and we'll all have some live questions. That subtle distinction between the excitement of now, the precursor of the briefing into it, is really genuinely powerful. We've been very unsubtle, I think, with our ability to look. Here's a class in Australia. What have I got on the wall? I've got a great big map of the wall. I've got pins in the wall. But what are the pins? The pins are mystery Skype moments. These are schools that have Skyped in without saying who they are, and the kids in the class have got a week to work out who they are. You kind of peering and think, it's dark there, but they're all at school same time as us. Must be Tromsø or something like that. Or it's dark there, but it's midday here. I must be looking at not longitude, but latitude. Really exciting stuff. That sense of connectedness is absolutely going to be at the heart of where we're going with all this and what we're doing with it. And it matters hugely because kids are supporting each other in all this around the world. Look, here's some lovely little examples. And let's go to this one. This is a class where every single kid knows where every other kid is. Total data transparency. No privacy. You're not in a world of privacy. You're in a world beyond Snowden. You're in a world beyond, that sense of, I might have stuff that's private about my learning. Why wouldn't you share it? Why wouldn't you build? Well, when I took this photograph, the little girl here, just here, was telling me that, with some pride, that she'd moved up from being a 4 to a 5. And could you see that little blue tack dot there? She pulled herself off and moved herself up, and she said, I'm not just a 5, I'm a good 5. She kind of moves up the column, you know. At the same time, a kid down at this end was saying, you know what, he said, a term ago I was at the end of the red numbers, now I've gone right down through the greens, and I'm at this thing at the end. And the two of them turned round and high-fived each other. You know, not being judgmental about where they were, but being judgmental about the rate of, well, the slope of the curve, about how fast they were going, about the progress they were making. And we know that when we arm them with the ability to support each other, boy, do they move forward quickly. Look, here's a bunch of kids in Tasmania. What's happening here is the lad here with his green shirt on is partway through a piece of work, and he doesn't know how well he's doing, really. The kids on the floor have already done that piece of work and are interested, really, in supporting him. And the mantra in the school, by the way, is easy on the author, tough on the content. Easy on the author, tough on the content. And the girl here is the one reliable kid in the class, which, by the way, is always a girl, who's got a camera, and she's taking photographs of the moment so that everything is documented properly. And what does their comment start to look like? Well, pretty flipping fierce. Look, here's what they're saying. And I just took the picture, so I clipped a bit of the edge, I'm sorry, but you can read it for yourself. But tough on the author, tough on the content, easy on the author. They're being pretty tough here. Look, you know, the best you've got here, mate, is a D. You know, technical terms in bullet points, that's not very good. So far, D+, little sad face there. Melanie, hearts, I love you, you know. I love you very much, but your work is crap, sort it out, you know. Now, we know in higher ed that students supporting each other, we've only known since 1927, not been all that long, but we know that if students pick up 2 pieces of work, make a judgment, this is better than that one, put them down, pick up another 2, we know that in half an hour, they know exactly what adequate, inadequate, and stellar looks like, and also you have a better rank order than if you triple marked it with 2 colleagues. So turning our heads back on to a space where we're saying to our learners, I'll tell you what, you can do this better than we can. You can build better learning. You can design better spaces. You can make judgments about each other's work way better than we can. It's an electrifying place. And it's a place that can only happen with great interpersonal tools, with great connectivity, with great platforms, which is why we're all here. Let's go on from there a little bit, because it gets a little bit more exciting yet, because some of the possibilities are pretty amazing. I'm building this school down on the south coast of England. Let's, as I talk, can we kill the volume on this one? Thanks, Alan. So we're just going to go on a little tour of this school. These kids were one of the toughest schools in southern England 2 years ago, highest rate of teenage pregnancy south of Birmingham, huge levels of child support. Look at these children now. Do they look undergraduate? Do they look mutually supportive? Do they look like they're getting on with the work? Yes, yes, and yes. But do they look autonomous? Sure as heck they do. Have you seen a teacher yet? I haven't. Extraordinary, isn't it? These children, I took a group of Australians around the school 3 years ago. They described the school as full of, and I quote, feral children. And I took them back 9 months ago, and I had to get the registers out to prove to them that they were the same children. These are children we trusted with the design of a better school. These are kids who are proud of the work that they were doing. And I'm not going to say to you, and these kids, by the way, they're mixed age, 5, 6, 7, the good readers are sitting with the 10-year-olds, you know. It's a mixed age school, stage not age school, go as fast as you like. I'm not going to say to you, you've got, well, say the 7-year-old, you haven't got 10 years before these kids get to you, because the kids are going to do their own degrees anyway in their own school, because the school we built has these characteristics. It's a playful place. I've built it in a business park and a hotel complex, parachuted it into just other people's buildings. But crucially, it's an all-to-21 institution. I'm saying to the kids, Hey, you go fast enough, you can graduate when you like. It's a really interesting question here for us. What's been the impact of technology on all our lives? What's been the impact of technology on everything you do? Your shopping is faster, you've got better choices, things are cheaper. Why hasn't education started to look like that? Why aren't our universities graduating kids at 14 and 15 and 16? Because you know they could do it. I took a bit of time talking to several thousand children in different countries around the world. Research is on my website. And I said to them, the subject you're passionate about, at what age do you think you could go to college and do it? Do you know what percentage of children said 18? 0. Not one child said, you know what, I'd like to wait till I'm 18 before I do that. Every kid said, actually could have done. One kid said 9. Little boy, well, I don't believe it for a minute. Daft as a brush. I mean, kids are still kids, you know. But 15, 16, 17, what are we going to do with the productivity of better learning? What are we going to do with the impact of, you know, we're going to spend a lot of time the next couple of days talking about real proper integration of Blackboard system from all the components assembled from all those company acquisitions into something proper, solid, stands under your feet, gives you a real leverage for better learning. What are we going to do with the better learning? We're going to put more stuff in the curriculum. Well, it's an interesting question because one of the things that's a bit of a surprise in all this is the amount of time we spend in learning. It's got less and less. You know, if I look at, well, you can see the figures. This is not PowerPoint. I don't need to read from the screen, you know. But you can see what's happening here. You know, the percentage of our lives we spend in learning is getting less and less. We're living longer. Kids starting primary school this year will mostly live to over 100. If you can hold your body together for another 50, you're probably going to make 100. It's a real good incentive to get back in the gym, you know. But the amount of time we spend learning is getting less and less. Now, draw back the curtains, look at this campus. You know, we won't be able to build campuses as sumptuous as this for the kids who need to go to college. It's hugely, it's unaffordable now, let alone in 10 years' time. But what we can build are more enduring learning experiences. What we can build are more seductive learning experiences. What we can build are learning experiences, I suspect, without end. You know, I'm spending some time at the moment trying to build a university degree, which looks like this. And it's proper interesting. We're giving people credit for being on the course, not for finishing it. You know, you can imagine a kind of Mozilla badge-driven thing. We're saying to them, it's a bit like being in the England, well, I was going to say the England cricket team, but we're so bad now at cricket, it's a bad example really, but it's like being in a football team, you know. While you're in it, you can say, tell you what, I'm in, you know, when we're at the Real Madrid football team. When you're out of it, you're not. So when you're on the undergraduate course, you know, you've got a little badge, you've got BR after your name, bachelor's level researcher, MR, master's level researcher. I don't think we can get away with DR, a doctoral researcher, but I'm sure we'll think of something. And you can stay on the course forever. And to be on the course, there are some entitlements, and entitlements would be you're going to put back in. Do you remember those two girls on the sofa a decade or so ago? You know, your expectation that you'll put back in is more than an expectation, it's a requirement. And who's going to judge the quality of what you do? You know, if my requirement is that I'm going to deliver a seminar, and my seminar is going to be, I'm going to maybe do 2 a year that I'll deliver, and 4 a year that I'll attend, you can put inverted commas around seminar because I don't really mean it to be in that form. But, you know, you guys, if you come to my activity, you'll make the judgment about whether it was bachelor's or master's or, you know, Stephen, that really wasn't good enough. And I'm not going to weep. I'll say, fair enough, guys, you've got plenty of time. I'll do another one differently. You know, peer-referenced, peer-driven, peer-resourced, learner-led. That sound familiar? Starts to sound like a doctoral program to me. Starts to sound like higher education was 200 or 300 years ago. And look, intentionally global. Look, entirely bespoke. every student following a bespoke degree that suits them, not anybody else. And look, really interestingly, incredibly cheap. I had an interesting chat with Nicholas after. I'm a sailor, he's a sailor, so we get to talk. I had a chat with him after he brought Skype out the first time. You know, and remember, he sold the company, 3 times now, you know, keeps a little bit, sells it, keeps a bit and sells it. And he said that in blue. You know, he said, look, I'll tell you what, you know, we don't have a business plan, but it's going to be so big we won't need one. I think that degree, as you see it there, will make money at £2 per head per week. Hey, with 2 million students, that's a huge revenue. That's a huge revenue. And I think, by the way, we can make money at 1 million students, and if it goes to 2 million, we'll just cut the bill. So, hey, we got 2 million students, call it £1 a week. We got 4 million, call it 25 pence. We got 10 million, just don't bother to pay. It's not worth collecting. That's the future of higher education. Scale, quality, mutuality, great technology. You know, we are in the right place for most of that. So this is all starting to get pretty exciting. And we've only got 9 minutes or so I'm going to scamper a little bit. The ability to do things as kids is fantastic. Look, let's go to here. This was a bunch of kids I had in London last year before last, and they're kids from Spain, from Denmark. I'm rebuilding education around Silkeborg at the moment, and Cayman Islands, all over the place. Brought all the kids together, wanted to really focus on geeky stuff, so had the kids all dressed as binary numbers, which is quite good fun. You kind of run up to them and shout 27 or whatever, and they all line themselves up in the appropriate binary code, which I love. Do you know that in Bulgaria, one day a year, the kids all dress in their favourite letter? You come to school in the character of your favourite. I don't think that'll work in Dublin. The kids would all line up at the bus stop and spell obscene things, wouldn't they? You know, but hey, we need a U over here, you know. But with numbers, you can have a lot of fun. And some of the fun involved kids programming, of course, because I'm passionate about proper code, and they've used those little Raspberry Pis. So here's a little Raspberry Pi, little naked computer. And these are primary kids, so they're pretty sharp. So we gave them those makey boards and said to them, could you build a controller for your game out of bananas? So here, they've had 2 days by this point, so they're pretty good. You know, they've got an up, down, left and right banana, and they're playing the game with their banana, and they're so proud about it. They challenge teachers walking around the street, say, hey, you know what, you could do this too. Just pick up a banana, give it a go. But they're good because they're being helped by bigger kids. And that night, I've got the kids for 4 days. At the end of day 2 that night, I realized that the big kids are saying, you know what, I reckon we could fly our parrot drone with the Raspberry Pi. That's quite hard, because you've got to interrupt the code between the phone and the drone. You've got to hack it, you've got to work out what the undocumented variables all are. You've got to get the Raspberry Pi to do it. And this is tough stuff. You know, they wrote some cool code. Bizarrely, they started dressing as scientists. They all turned up in white coats because they thought that was pretty cool, you know. And it was. And of course, by the end of 2 days, they'd got the drone flying and they were looking pretty pleased. And can you see that glint of yellow over there? Of course, they got the whole thing flying with their flipping bananas. Now, I don't know how good you are, but if I gave you a heap of bananas and a Raspberry Pi and a drone and 4 days, I'm not sure how far you'd get. One of the things that was interesting about this was, this is in a big computer show, lots of sales dudes, you know, at the show, and they knew something exciting was happening because the kids were all kind of high-fiving and dancing around and whooping and hollering, you know. So a lot of people arrived in suits and nobody had a clue what they were watching. All they could see was there's a guy over there in a white coat stroking bananas, and over here there's a drone flying, you know. There are probably websites for that kind of thing, you know. So. Well, it doesn't stop there because the kids, of course, wanted to publish what they were doing and be excited about it. And my little granddaughter, Heppell, here she is, a little tiny girl, she was pretty excited by what she'd seen. And I'm going to need the sound here again.
Hi.
So she thought she'd build a tutorial to tell other people how to do it too. Of course, she's...
And this is the circuit board. And this is the back, okay? see it? Good. You need 1, 2, 3, 4 bananas. It doesn't matter if you don't like them, then...
And so on, So, primary kids frighten the hell out of secondary kids. Secondary kids show how cool they can be and mystify executives. Meanwhile, pre-primary kids say, that's cool, we can do it too. And off they go. What is not to like about this extraordinary world of learning? What's not to like about the mutuality of all this? And crucially, we've leapt from those 1970s when I guess many of you were doing your own learning, when learning was done for, the design of learning was done for our kids and our students. Universities were built for them. Through the 1990s, when we realized that the little blighters were pretty sharp with some of this tech, so we thought we'd better get some focus groups going and do some co-construction and get some feedback, to today, where they're doing it for themselves. They're designing their own learning. The question for us is, will that super cool learning on television, will that exhilarating learning that the kids are swapping with each other, will it ever be part of the higher education that we're in, that we're part of? And the jury is out. It won't be if we don't run a lot faster than we're running at the moment. Can we trust the kids? Of course we can trust the kids. Look, here's Chris Espinosa, who was, there he is, 1977. He was Apple's 8th employee. And Chris still works for Apple. And if you talk to him, he's really angry about being employee number 8. Why is he angry? Because actually he was still at school, he was 14. And the day they gave out the employee numbers, of course, he didn't get to the company till 3:30. He only worked there after school. And yet at 14, he was designing. Look, here's Steve Jobs' bedroom as a teenager. Recognize it? Yeah, it's unusually tidy, actually, slightly alarmingly. But he was building computers. Those aren't pizza boxes. Those are computers. It was Bill Gates at school. And Bill's, well, you can read why Bill was interested in databases. Girls was the answer, really. Of course. We trusted our computing lives to teenagers. We trusted our rock and roll lives to teenagers. Why on earth would we not trust our learning lives to teenagers too? And look, going forward from all this, just go back over your geek lives. Hardware, all those years ago, building on those business machines. IBM was a vast company that built hardware. And if they got hardware, somebody needed to build the software. PC-DOS became MS-DOS, and so on. And, I'm not sure, I don't know. Do you know what the operating system is on your phone? Just about. Kids don't. Once we'd got operating systems, we needed databases to put all the stuff in. And I'm a great friend of Larry Ellison and go racing on his boat. Lovely man. His boat's bigger than my boat. And that's because databases were huge at that point. And of course, once you got databases, you needed to be able to search them. And each one of these steps was a mega explosion in corporate futures. And of course, once you could search the stuff, you couldn't wait to tell your mates about it and to socialize, as many of you are doing, as I'm watching here. And once you can do all that, you know full well the next leap in all this is going to be learning. The question for us is it going to be our learning, somebody else's learning? Are we even going to be in the debate? Is it going to be part of our future? Well, as we roll forward on all this, you might just want to leave the words of young Krista echoing in your ears. And Krista, I had the privilege of rebuilding the education system in the Cayman Islands. Schools had all been blown down by Hurricane Ivan and Ivan the Terrible, And I said to a lot of the kids on the beach, this, by the way, is 7 Mile Beach in Grand Cayman, which is only 5 miles long, wonderfully Caribbean. They said, we call it 7 Miles Beach, we'll get more tourists, So I said to Krista, what are you hoping for, love, from these extraordinary new schools? And she said, this.
My hope for the new school is to get the right mix of education so that I can not only be noticed on the island, but also be noticed worldwide.
You know, what you're doing is giving learners the chance to be famous for their learning, giving them a chance to be notorious, to be stunning, to be celebrities, to be stellar. In 35 years of experience of all this, the only projects, and there have been, I don't know, 270 million euros worth of projects, my research, in all those projects, the only projects that were really good enough were the ones that terrified me. When I went home at night and I woke up in the dead of night, shaking, properly scared, because I said, Stephen, you've done it now, mate, you've just gone too far. Those were the projects that were just about ambitious enough for where the learners are going. And the learners can be absolutely stellar. That school I built on the south coast, 300% improvement in exams in 1 year. Kids can be absolutely stellar. So all I'm saying to you is, go away from here, go back to your institutions, go back to your day job, go back to your software development, and frighten the life of yourselves. If you're not awake in the middle of the night, trembling with fear, you haven't been brave enough. And if you are trembling with fear, this is as good as it gets. This is the best decade you will ever live through. Little chance to change the world we're learning, little chance to mend the world we're learning, little chance to have fun we're learning. Seize it with both hands. Thank you very much. Thank you.